VinController.eu. Check vehicle history for every used car in Europe. Welcome back to another episode of our Volkswagen Beetle series. In the last episode, we were at the Slovakia Ring, but today we're at MM Racing. I know you might be used to seeing other kinds of videos on couches like this, but today it's going to be very civil and to the point. In the last episode, we set a lap time with the Beetle and unveiled our mystery racing driver. And we're really hoping you liked our choice. And we're absolutely convinced he was the best pilot we could have gotten our hands on. But today, we decided to talk about what's going to happen to the Beetle in the future. But that's going to be pretty easy, because as you can see, we're surrounded by goodies. So, the first thing on the list is this absolute bombshell from KW. This, dear people, is the best thing you can do for your car. A suspension upgrade from a top-notch manufacturer. Our hopes are pretty high with this one. We hope it will transform the Beetle from a soft shopping trolley to a fast, sharp performance machine. So, now you know what to expect in terms of suspension. Richard's other problem with the car was that the brakes were completely soft in the third corner. That's way too soon. But don't worry, we ordered new ones and we'll show them to you once they arrive. And of course, we also have to take a look at the car's power. We know we can get some more power from that engine before the transmission starts being a problem. But there is one thing that's been over our heads lately. The day after we left the Slovakia Ring, the weather has completely shifted. The daily temperature average is now 6 degrees Celsius. And that's when this question comes in. Will we be able to beat the Beetle's lap time in much worse weather? I think I'd start with changing the tires. The old ones are almost slicks now. And hey Richard, we're sending an invoice for those. Anyways, jokes aside, the tires are completely trash, so we need to get new ones. And if everything goes to plan, how much time do we have to try again? I'd say we have around 3 to 4 weeks. Okay, so by that time, it's definitely going to be snowing. And where's the problem? We'll just get a snow lap time. That's just terrible. But don't worry, we're going to give it our all so that we can do everything we promised to you guys. We want one of you to win this car by the end of the December. And of course, a notary is going to be present at the time. And in the end, we want one of you to drive off with this car. Oh, and if you'd like to enter our giveaway, all the info is in the description. Feel free to read the terms and conditions and enter. Alright, a few days have passed and we're right back at MM Racing. Sadly, Peter couldn't make it today. And that's because he received a certain gift. A deep diving course coupon, which he decided to redeem on the coldest day of the year. Anyways, I do wish him a speedy recovery, and I'm sorry he couldn't be here with us today. But Marek is here today, and that's much more important. He's here to tell us what was done to the car recently. I can already see those beautiful coilovers from KW, but I wanted to ask, why did we choose this suspension? Well, in terms of price to performance, KW is just about the best brand you can go with. They offer many different variants like the KW1, KW3 or Street Comfort. In our case, we decided to go with the KW Variant 1, which only has height adjustability. You can set the damping stiffness and rebound on these ones. These are tuned for the Beetle from the factory, and they are definitely leagues better than any other system that you might have on your car. But most importantly for us, we can change the ride height, which comes in pretty handy anytime you're trying to install bigger wheels on the car or just lower it. In terms of simplicity, this is the most ideal variant. The performance of this set is basically not even comparable to other sets in the same price range. Yeah, I can also see that you fitted new brakes. Yeah, we just installed that set. The old ones were completely destroyed after those few laps. Yeah, Richard told me he was praying in the third turn already. Well, you see, that will eventually happen to every single brake set you fit to the car. But these ones are bigger, more massive, and therefore can hold more heat, which means they'll last longer. But you can still overheat these. Yeah, that makes sense if you go hard for 10 laps. Every single brake overheats once. But come and look in here. We could have fit some Brembos in here, right? But I'm guessing that's not really in our budget. Yeah, those cost around what you bought this car for. Jesus. Anyways, could you please tell us a bit more about the KW suspension and how it works? And what are the differences between the variants? What do they offer and why are they making so many variants? Of course, the differences between the variants mainly come down to adjustability. You can either only adjust the ride height, the damping stiffness, or the rebound stiffness. And there are even more expensive variants like the KW4 or Club Sport, which both feature external fluid reservoirs. Those allow them to work for longer without overheating, so they are performing at their best for longer. Yes, you're right, and there's also an option to run 2 springs instead of 1. But at this price level, they basically build you a bespoke set to your exact specifications. KW can also manufacture bespoke sets, if you have special wishes, like ride height that's taller than original. Yeah, but I'm guessing those variants are more for people who do serious track driving. Yes, and also rallying. But our reasoning for replacing the suspension was completely different. I see this every day and it really makes me sad. Many people just want to lower their car a bit. In the better case scenario, they choose lowering springs for their car. The worst case scenario is when they just cut the springs they have. Oh yeah, people used to do that here on old Skodas. Yeah, all you needed to do those days was just fill the front trunk with potatoes. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, because first I have to explain to you the functionality of these coilovers. Every stock damper is designed to work at a certain ride height. And in a small range around the ride height, it works the most effectively. The piston inside the damper moves really easily at this range. It's done to keep the car much more comfortable on small bumps. But when this piston gets out of this range, its movement stiffens up a lot. Now imagine we're installing lowering springs on the car. By lowering the car, you get the piston in the stock damper into a stiff range, which leaves you with a car that's really unpleasant to drive. It's going to be very, very stiff when going over road bumps, which will definitely have an effect on the driving comfort. But let's say you're driving a bit faster and you hit a pothole. In that case, the damper is supposed to expand so that the wheel has traction. But there, the damper can get into the soft zone again and you won't have traction over that period. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the exact opposite of what you want. So if you want to improve your car's driving characteristics, lowering springs on stock dampers are definitely not the way to go. In that case, we need to use a whole different damper that was designed to run at a different ride height and has its own spring to go along with it. You can either buy the springs and dampers separately, or you could go with coilovers, which are already an assembled set. You can go with the KW or some of the cheaper brands. And what's the difference between them, you might be asking? Well, all the well-known and budget-oriented brands and their suspension systems ride as harsh as a rock. In other words, the car looks great, but you'll die trying to drive it on our roads. And that's where KW and other premium brands come in, KW being the cheapest of those brands, because their prices are incomparable to Öhlins. But the company's motto is that a car with their suspension system installed should be much more comfortable than the stock car in normal driving conditions. That means it's perfect for our roads? Yeah. Let's say a customer with stock suspension arrives. It can even be a brand new car. Its stock suspension can be in perfect working condition. And its owner still wants the KW suspension installed. And believe it or not, after we install it, the car is much more comfortable in normal driving conditions. But thanks to the variability that's built into the suspension set, you can take many corners much faster than you could before with the stock suspension set. which means that during those high-speed maneuvers, the car is much more stable. Many of the best features of this system are actually realized only under hard driving conditions. And yes, you're not losing any traction, and that should always be the primary reason why you want to install a new suspension set. So what you're saying is that Richard is going to get a better lap time just because of the coilovers. Yep, definitely. I've brought this model of a damper so I can show everybody how a damper works on the inside. And all of them look like this on the inside. So what can I adjust on the top? Here, on the top side, I can adjust the rebound stiffness. And on the bottom side, I can adjust the damping stiffness. Alright, correct me if I'm wrong, but you just install the suspension and go for a test drive. And based on what you felt, you adjust the dampers one by one, right? Not quite. If you want to assemble the suspension correctly, you need a few steps before that. You have to put the car on corner weights. Since we can change the ride height of each damper separately, we can also completely balance the car. And there's quite a simple reason why we do that. If we were to set all the dampers at the same ride height, you have to realize you still have the engine on one side of the car and transmission on the other. And we also can't forget about the driver. That leaves us with a different weight on each corner of the car. In the real world, it looks something like this. Let's say we have 100 kilos more on one corner of the car. That means we have 100 kilos less on the opposite corner of the car. If I was to take the corner like that, the car would be much more weighed down on one side, which means I won't be able to take the most effective route through the corner. And then you can start wondering why you're taking left turns better than the right turns. So what you're saying is, it's optimal for the car to be completely balanced. Yes, definitely. Immediately after the installation, the next step is to balance the car on corner weights. And after that we can get to the next step, which mostly consists of more driving and a lot of small setup changes, so that the suspension can ride at its best. And we have to do this on every car, because no two cars are the same. They all weigh different amounts and have different transmissions, and that has a big effect on the total weight balance of the car. The car's base setup, which you can find in the manual, is just that, a base setting or a suggestion. You always have to tune the suspension a bit. But most importantly, you have to communicate with the customer in order to find the best setup for them. Most of the time, when people want to upgrade their suspension sets, they do that to enjoy driving the car more. Which is essentially the whole point of KW. You see, the KW company was established in a part of Austria where if you want to visit the nearest city, you have to drive 30 plus kilometers on really curvy roads. That's how they decided they would start developing suspension products. The owner of the company liked to drive a lot, but the Opel that he had at the time didn't handle the best. So he redesigned the suspension at home, and the car started driving much better. Soon enough, neighbors started noticing, and they started coming for upgrades as well. And they're manufacturing everything in the same place to this day. On top of that, they have a separate suspension brand called ST Suspensions, which is manufactured in the same factory. And the only real difference between them is the surface finish. And that way, they always have a cheaper option for every customer. But the ST suspensions use the same technologies as KW's. So you're saying if we really wanted to cut costs, we could have gone with the ST suspensions. Alright, so what I'm hearing right now is that it's not just about buying the suspension set online and installing it in your garage. It's way better to come to a company like you, who has experience in installing them and can do it correctly. Yes, it's actually very important. That's why we see so many mad people on forums saying their suspension doesn't work correctly. Yeah, we get that quite a lot. Almost all the budget-oriented brands ride really harsh. And trust us, your backbone is not the only thing that's suffering at the moment. The chassis suddenly has to absorb all the strong impacts, which can be strong enough to break a weld. I've even seen a whole shock tower torn out of the car. The chassis just fell down to the ground. So here we have some rims. Mind you, these are not the ones that will end up on the car. Our rims have already been ordered from one of our partners, who have been really supportive during the whole process. Anywhere we asked, they were happy to help us really quick. We decided to go with the 18-inch rims. But the million-dollar question still is whether they will fit with this suspension setup. And yes, the wheels are TUV approved. But they still haven't shown up because there was some delays, but they should be here in a few days. Once we have them in our hands, we'll put some rubber on them, and then we have to test whether they fit. Or rather, pray that they fit. And if they don't, well, they're still 15-inch steelies with winter tires. Well, if they don't fit, we'll have to search around for another 18-inch set. We'd like to stay with 18 inches, but if they don't fit, we'll have to go with 17s. Well, I hope you prayed enough, because this one doesn't fit. It doesn't? Many of you already know, we don't do things just for the fun of it. You actually have a good chance of winning this car. All you have to do is become our monthly member. And then you're automatically entered in our giveaway. But there are many other benefits and discounts. You can get discounts with many of our member shops. And since me and Marek know each other pretty well, we decided to make a small deal. Because we think we know what you all want. So we decided on a discount for our members. Well, the discount mainly applies on our services, like the suspension install, on which you can get a 10% discount. We also have a discount for chip tuning. Any modifications to the ECU or the TCU gets a 10% discount as well. You also get discounts for many of KW's products. And the same goes for many other brands. All Boostmania members are entitled to get an MM Racing discount. I'm afraid I can't give you much more information than that, because there are many variables when choosing a discount, but we can assure you, you will get a discount. Of course, if you already are a member and don't know about this, you can get all the information you need by signing into your profile at our website. The site will also instruct you on how to apply those discounts at many of our partner shops. Mark, thank you for being in this video, it was very informative. So, see you all in the next episode, where we'll be trying to fit the new rims. Let's hope they fit.